The rain was coming down in sheets, a relentless curtain of gray that turned the world into a blur. Inside his small, weathered house, Mark looked at his daughter, Lily, who was sound asleep on the couch, her little chest rising and falling rhythmically. A small, peaceful smile played on her lips, a stark contrast to the storm raging in Mark's heart. He was a single dad, and a poor one at that. The small construction business he'd poured his life into was on the verge of collapse, crushed by a lawsuit from a powerful competitor. Tomorrow was the final hearing, and a judge he'd never met would decide his fate. His fate and Lily's. If he lost, they would lose everything: their home, their security, their future. The weight of it all was suffocating. He ran a hand through his damp hair, the stress making his head pound. He just needed a miracle. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from outside, sharp and metallic, cutting through the roar of the storm. It sounded like a car accident. Mark's first instinct was to stay inside, to lock the doors and protect what little he had left. But then he thought of Lily. What if someone was hurt? What if they had a child with them? He couldn't just ignore it. Grabbing a heavy-duty flashlight and an old raincoat, he stepped out into the deluge. The wind whipped the rain into his face, cold and biting. A few yards down the road, a sleek, expensive-looking car was half submerged in a muddy ditch, its hazard lights blinking erratically. Two young women, soaked to the bone and shivering, were struggling with the driver's side door. They looked panicked and completely lost. They were identical twins, their faces pale with fear under the flashing lights. Mark rushed over. "Are you two okay?" he shouted over the storm. One of the twins, her voice trembling, replied, "We're fine, but the car is stuck deep in the mud. Hydroplane. Our phones have no signal out here," the other twin added. "We have to get to town. Our father's expecting us. It's an emergency." Looking at their designer clothes and the luxury car, Mark felt a familiar pang of inadequacy. These girls were from a different world, a world where you didn't worry about your next meal or keeping a roof over your head. But right now, they were just two scared people stranded in a storm. And he couldn't leave them. "My house is just up the road," he offered. "It's not much, but it's warm and dry. You can wait out the storm there and try to call for help when it lets up." The twins, whose names he learned were Sarah and Emily, hesitated for a moment, eyeing his modest home. But the relentless rain and cold made the decision for them. They gratefully accepted his offer. Inside, Mark quickly got them dry towels and blankets. Lily stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy," she mumbled, sitting up. "Who are they?" Mark smiled reassuringly. "They're just some new friends, sweetie." Their car broke down. Lily, with the innocent trust of a child, immediately warmed up to them. She showed them her favorite teddy bear and her drawings, her bright, cheerful energy slowly melting the twins' anxiety. They were clearly charmed by her. Sarah and Emily began to relax, sharing stories about their lives in the city. They talked about their father, a man they described as strict and very dedicated to his work, but also incredibly loving. As they talked, Mark made them some hot soup, a simple meal of vegetables and broth. It was all he had, but he offered it freely. Emily took a spoonful and her eyes widened in surprise. "This is delicious!" she exclaimed. "You're a great cook." Mark just shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Just a simple soup. It's what Lily and I have most nights." The mention of their nightly meal brought the reality of his situation crashing back. He glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and the weight of tomorrow's court case settled heavily on his shoulders again. He tried to hide his worry, but Sarah seemed to notice the shift in his mood. "Is everything all right?" she asked gently. Mark hesitated, not wanting to burden them with his problems, but something about their kindness made him feel safe. "So," he told them. He told them about his failing business, the unfair lawsuit, and the judge who held his entire future in his hands. As he spoke, he saw a strange look pass between the twins. They exchanged a quick, unreadable glance. "What's the judge's name?" Emily asked, her voice suddenly serious. "Judge Harrison," Mark replied, sighing. Robert Harrison, Sarah, and Emily froze, their spoons clattering against their bowls. They stared at each other, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Then, Sarah slowly pulled out her wallet and showed Mark a family photo on her driver's license. In the picture, she and Emily were standing on either side of a distinguished-looking man with a stern but kind face. "This is our father," Sarah said quietly. Robert Harrison. Mark felt the air leave his lungs. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The man who was about to decide whether he and Lily would be homeless was the father of the 2 women he had just rescued from a storm. It couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of cruel joke. A wave of panic washed over him. Had he said too much? Would they tell their father he was trying to influence him? He started to stammer an apology, but Emily held up a hand. "No, please," she said, her eyes filled with a new kind of respect. "You helped us without knowing who we were. You opened your home to us, shared your food, and you didn't ask for a single thing in return." Sarah added, "Our dad, he always taught us about character. He says, you see a person's true character, not in how they treat their superiors, but in how they treat those who can do nothing for them." They stayed for a few more hours, the storm outside eventually calming to a drizzle. A tow truck finally arrived, and as they were about to leave, Sarah and Emily gave Mark a heartfelt hug. "Thank you for everything," they said in unison. "You're a good man, Mark." Mark watched them drive away, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He had no idea what to expect tomorrow. The next morning, Mark walked into the courtroom, feeling a strange mix of dread and faint hope. He saw Judge Harrison at the bench, his expression stern and unreadable. The proceedings began, and Mark's lawyer presented his case. But the opposing counsel was aggressive and persuasive. Mark's heart sank with every argument. It felt hopeless. Finally, Judge Harrison cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. He looked directly at Mark, his gaze intense. "Mr. Collins," he began, his voice deep and authoritative. "Last night, I received a call from my daughters. They were stranded in a storm, and a stranger took them in. He gave them shelter, warmth, and food, asking for nothing in return. He shared what little he had, all while facing a personal crisis of his own that would make most men bitter and closed off." The judge paused, and his expression softened almost "That stranger was you, Mr. Collins. My daughters told me everything. They told me about your kindness, your integrity, and your wonderful little girl, Lily." A murmur went through the courtroom. Mark felt his face flush, completely stunned. Judge Harrison continued, "I have thoroughly reviewed the evidence of this case, and I have found significant merit in your position. However, the law is not just about facts and figures. It is also about justice and character. Your actions last night spoke volumes about your character." He then looked at the opposing party. "And this court has found evidence of predatory business practices on your part." With a firm bang of his gavel, Judge Harrison ruled in Mark's favor, dismissing the lawsuit and even ordering an investigation into the other company. Mark sat there, unable to move, as tears of relief streamed down his face. He had won. He and Lily were safe. Outside the courtroom, Judge Harrison approached him, no longer an imposing figure on a bench, but just a man of father. "My daughters were right about you," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for taking care of them." Mark shook his hand, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Your Honor. You have no idea what this means for me and my daughter." The judge smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Please," he said, "call me Robert. And I think I do have an idea. A man who shows such kindness in the face of adversity deserves a fresh start." That day, Mark didn't just win a court case. He won back his future. It all started with one small act of kindness on a stormy night. A simple choice to help a stranger. It was a powerful reminder that you never know how or when your actions will come back to you, weaving a tapestry of fate in the most unexpected ways. His life was changed forever, not by a miracle from the sky, but by the simple goodness that resides in the human heart. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting content. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Share your story with us. Until next time, take care and spread a little kindness.